initially when I had just married my wife, that's when I quit. So I told my dad, I'm thinking he'll be thrilled, super pumped. And he was more concerned than anything. He was like, what are you doing?
Welcome to the Troy Kearns podcast. We talk all things real estate, business, entrepreneurship, and we've got a real estate entrepreneur in the house today, speaking at our mastermind tomorrow or the next day. I can't remember which day it is, but Blake Choisnet, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Man, I'm super excited to talk to you. Tell us about your story, how you got started.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I was a good little boy and studied really hard. I did what I was supposed to do. You know, I went to university. I actually ended up with 2 degrees.
What were your degrees in?
Mechanical and aerospace engineering.
Ooh, you're smart.
Well, I started out in music, playing jazz music, and then switched majors 6 semesters in a row.
What instrument?
Saxophone and clarinet. I played clarinet classically and saxophone for jazz music.
Wow.
Yeah, so saxophone's my real true
There's
love.
3 types of saxophones, right?
Yeah, there's more than that, but I played alto and tenor and a little bit of bari.
Barry's the big one.
The big dog, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that about you. That's cool, man.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of discipline too.
I mean, we were required to practice 3 or 5 hours a day, and
wow.
that discipline really translated. But you know, I was undeclared for 1 semester, and I'm sure my parents thought that was really, you know, just thrilling for them. But ended up graduating and, you know, getting a good job. Moved to Austin, Texas. Lived there for about 10 years. Worked for a tech company there. Had a really good experience. They treated me well. It wasn't a doomsday scenario.
Right.
And I really kind of fell into real estate investing. I bought my first house. I was coming up on 30. Tired of moving around every 6 to 12 months. You know, you live with your buddies. One gets married, one gets a job promotion, one moves, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I was tired of moving around, so I bought a house, rented it out to my buddies, and house hacked. But yeah, I mean, I lived down in Austin, starting, it was too expensive for me to invest there other than primary residence.
Right.
And so for my cash flow investing, I started saying, hey, I got to figure out a market that really serves my goals. So I started investing remotely.
Okay.
And that's really where it all kind of took off.
Where was the first place you started investing remotely?
The first place I started investing remotely was Abilene, Texas.
Abilene, Texas.
That's still where I invest, yeah.
And where is that market?
That if you sit in Dallas and you drive 2 hours due west.
Due west,
You're
okay.
running to Abilene. Yeah.
So I'm driving towards California.
Yeah.
And I run into Abilene. What's Abilene all about?
Abilene is a military base there. There's a lot of, it's a diversified economy. They've got Abilene Christian University is there,
Okay.
a D1 school. There's 4 higher level education institutions there, 2 D1s. There's a military base, Dyess Air Force Base. It's just really well diversified. The thing that I cared about was my priorities were, top one was cash flow, because I wanted to build up enough cash flow to exceed my expenses so I could retire or not have to work, right?
Right.
And when I first started, that number was $2,200 a month, because I was a bachelor. You know, I really didn't have a whole lot of expenses.
Yeah, that's tight. You're living tight.
Right.
Top ramen and
exactly. Yeah. And so then it grew. You know, now I'm married. I got a kiddo and all that stuff. So that number grows over time. But I needed cash flow, and then I wanted a low price of entry, because, you know, the
when you say low price of entry, you mean acquisition, your cost of what the house would be.
Cost of purchase. And
what
that was really
that?
a risk protection mechanism for me. You could buy a $200 million property, you screw it up 10%, that hurts. You buy a $100,000 property, you screwed up 10%, it's not fun, but...
You play in the same sandbox I play in.
Right, yeah.
You like the cheap houses.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
I think, and even Warren Buffett has said that if it was scalable for him to only invest in single family homes, he'd do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, because they're so liquid.
Yeah.
If you want to liquidate them, you can. They're a core need, even, you know, from a psychological perspective. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need food and shelter.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And funny thing about that is, like, when I look at like this market right now that we're in, and I'm like, oh, I need some cash. Like, you know, you might have to hold on to this house, right? And they're like, okay, I need to go get cash. I can just go sell a house that I've owned forever, right? So what year was that?
I bought my first remote property in 2019.
So 2019.
Yeah.
So you're 4 years in, coaching, teaching, doing massive action.
Yeah.
And you have like a degree that says you should be like hanging out with Elon Musk.
Yeah. I actually got a job offer from NASA
Did you really?
Out of school, and I decided, well, that was around the time where the public funding of NASA was questionable, and I ended up going working for a tech company that I really enjoyed, but ended up quitting. I was talking earlier with one of your teammates how when I went to quit, one of the first things my boss said was, "What if we doubled your salary?" And
what if we doubled your salary?
Right, yeah. And for me, I always thought making six figures would be insane.
Yeah.
From where I come from, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Making six figures.
Did you go broke?
And so, I don't really know that we grew up broke. We were provided for. I never really worried about money. But it's little things that I remember, like, we'd fill up with gas. I'd always like hold up the hose to get the last drops out. I thought that was normal until we got to college. You know what I mean? Like just stuff like that. But I had a super happy childhood.
Yeah.
So all that to say, like I was pretty frugal in general. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that, being frugal is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know a lot of people out there are thinking, like, well, if you make money, you spend money. It's like, I didn't buy my first car until I was 40 years old, and I was well into a multimillionaire stage.
Yeah.
Just because I was very frugal, I grew up broke, and I didn't. I just knew that a new car is not a good investment.
Yeah.
And then since then, that was in 2018, just to let you know. So
yeah.
Since then, it's like I've bought 6 new cars.
Yeah.
And I still think buying used is better sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my dad's always had a knack for finance. I mean, he's a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley. Like he's, really sharp at that. But even when I was a kid, I still remember we went to Mazzio's, every Sunday. It had an arcade, it had arcades, it had pizza, salad for the family, and then the kids would go after eating. We'd go play in the arcades, or at least pound the buttons. We didn't have any money.
Yeah,
and
right.
then the parents would chat, and I would ask my dad for a quarter, and every week. And sometimes I got one, most of the times I didn't. But one time he said, "Yeah, I'll give you a quarter." So my eyes, lit up. I'm pumped. I'm going to get to play Pac-Man or whatever it is. And he said, "But you owe me $1 when we get home." And I was like, I felt affronted, like he was wronging me, And I said, "No, I'm not doing that." And I said, "Why would you do that?" He said, "Well, that's called a loan. You're paying me 75 cents so that you can have the quarter now." And I was like, "Well, I'm not taking that." And he said, "Good, that's a bad loan." And I was like, "So I get the quarter?" And he was like, "No, you don't get the quarter." So that's the world I grew up in, like understanding finance and stuff like that. I had some side hustles and selling candy in 4th grade or lawn mowing and things like that.
You were a lawnmower.
Yeah.
You're my people.
Heck yeah.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah.
8 years old, started mowing lawns, mowed them till I got my first job at Burger King at 15. So 7-year lawn mowing career, and I still mow my lawn, which is 11 acres.
Heck yeah. Man, there's some local kids in our area that will, pull weeds for the old lady next door or whatnot. And I tell them, you guys got to start a lawn mowing business because you got the cute factor. Like people, if a kid comes up to your doorstep and says, "Can I please mow your lawn?" You're going to let them mow your lawn,
Listen.
And you make so much more money than your buddies. You have more flexibility. It is great.
You could come mow my lawn. I'll pay you $200 because it costs but my going rate for my lawn is like $400 to $600.
That's wild.
Yeah, because it's 11 acres.
Yeah.
It's a time commitment. For me, I'm just like, you know what? Sure, could I afford to pay someone to do it? Yes. But is my son going to learn that daddy pays for people to do stuff? Or is he going to learn that I'm still working my ass off?
Yeah.
And so that's the lesson I wanted to teach them.
Set an example for them. Yeah. What I like is, I've got a buddy who owns a lawn care company in town. And so we have him and his company mow our lawn. And we came to that. I was raised with the ethos of if you can do it yourself, you should do it yourself.
Yeah.
And the ethos of you should know how to do it for yourself. Forever, changing oil and all the stuff. And
it's a dying philosophy.
Yeah. But when I got to this decision, I said, you know what? I want to, because working in the yard is therapy for me. That's how I process. Like we work a lot with our heads.
Yeah.
So I like to get I've probably got dirt under my fingernails right now from being in the dirt. And that's restful for me. And so I have somebody else maintain the lawn while I build things extra. You know, we put in more landscaping or we do stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm always, if I need to think or I'm stressed out, I'm picking weeds in my lawn. My wife gives me a hard time. In fact, now my son will put him in his little, he's got one of those little blue car strollers with the and everything. And he'll be out in the front sitting in it, and he'll see me, and he'll just lean over and start grabbing fistfuls of grass. He's 16 months old, grabbing fistfuls of grass because he sees dad do it.
Monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, it's wow.
Yeah, so you said you kind of fell into real estate by accident because you house hacked this property. How did you take it to the next level?
Man, I had really 2 aha moments in real estate. The first was I bought this house. I bought it for $250.
Yeah.
I put 5% down because as a primary residence, I could. And so it was a 4-bed house that I rented the other 3 out. So, and they more than covered my mortgage.
Okay.
And that was my first aha moment where somebody else could pay for my mortgage.
Right.
I knew that theoretically, but then when I did it and I realized it works.
Doing is learning.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
And that was something where I realized, well, what if I did this again? And I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he was in the real estate agent world,
right,
and starting to think about investing. We actually ended up both starting to invest in Abilene at the same time. And he said, well, what if we bought a house every year? He was married with kids, so he couldn't house hack as easily. But he said, what if you bought a house every year,
right,
put it on a 15-year note? In 15 years, you would have a house paid off every year in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And you could either take the cash flow,
yeah,
which would be more taxable because you wouldn't have some of the debt service to offset it, or you could do a cash out refinance, which was my first time hearing about a cash out refinance.
Really?
And so if the house is $200,000 when you buy it, it's going to double in 15 years on average. So now it's worth $400, and you could cash out $320.
Yeah.
And the equivalent of $320,000 a year by doing one thing every year, just refinancing.
Tax free.
That was really tax free. That was the first time. That was the moment when I said this everything has changed.
Yeah.
Because now my life, my work life, my W-2 life has an end date.
Right.
And there's a lot of research that goes around the psychological aspect of, if you know there's a solution to a problem, you're 80% more likely to actually solve that problem.
Right.
And so then I saw an end date and I realized I don't have to have a W-2 the rest of my life.
Right.
And at that point I said, how do I do this faster? And that's when the conversation of, well, it's not going to be in Austin because I don't have 20% down. I don't have 6 figures to put down. So I started investing remotely, doing the BRRRR method because I didn't have a ton of money in my pocket anyway. I worked my tail off to find 10 grand to get started with.
Right. And so what's the BRRRR method for people who are not familiar with that term?
Yeah, for the BRRRR method, if you think about it this way, when you go to the bank says you need 20% down. The bank doesn't actually say that, though. They don't really care about 20% down. They care about how much they will give you. We care about 20% down because it comes out our bank account. It hurts our bank.
Right.
But they say, we'll give you 80% of this house.
Yeah.
That might sound trivial, but it's important. So on the other side, let's say you go buy a house like you're going to flip it. Chip and Joe Gaines, Property Brothers. You buy it for 50.
Yeah.
You put 20 into it.
Right.
Now it's worth 100.
Right.
And those are pretty reasonable numbers.
Right.
You owe $70,000. You borrowed that from Joe Bob or Jane Doe or whatever.
Yeah.
Now you go back over to the lender and say, hey, I've got a $100,000 house. I'd like to refinance my loan.
Right.
And what you've done is essentially created the equity, that $30,000 that you have in the property, you use that as your 20% down.
Right.
And so BRRRR is the acronym that explains it. First you buy a distressed property, you renovate it or rehab it,
right,
you rent it out, you refinance, and then you repeat it.
Nice.
And so that's what was right for me because I didn't have a ton of money.
Right.
I had some time. I think you can do this with 3 to 6 hours a week. Once you know what you're doing, you can close the door every 90 days. Pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. An hour a day is what I say to people. An hour a day.
Super scalable.
Yeah.
Because you can borrow other people's money.
Yeah.
To do it. I borrowed somebody else's money. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I downloaded a promissory note off the Googles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I signed it. It was not super enforceable.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was trustworthy and paid the guy back, and he made a bunch of money. But but that's all it was. Borrowing someone's money, fix it up. He's thrilled. He came back and said, hey, let's do this again. I just made 14%. This is great. It's way better than my
stock market
CD or put in savings and making 0.23% in Wells Fargo. And,
for sure.
So that's the model that I used to build things up. And then as equity grew, I used the equity recycle. I'd cash out refinance and go buy a bunch more doors, So really, if you just get in and you let it grow and you can hold on, and if you can cash flow, great, that's some protection for you. Over time, you're gonna make a ton of money.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of trying to buy inexpensive houses and to get as much cash flow as possible. I kind of stay in a space that is, people would call it the hood. I call it working class affordable housing. And the houses that we buy, we pay anywhere from, $20,000 to, I don't know, a little bit more, $80,000, $90,000, and we'll rent them out and just keep moving along, right?
Yeah. Well, there's probably people listening to the podcast saying those properties don't exist. They're not real. They're in New York, or they're in Nashville, or they're in California. Where are you finding deals like that?
Man, they are all over. So right now we're active in a few different markets. One I've been active in for 12 years, and that is Biloxi, Mississippi. Okay. Nobody thinks of Biloxi,
Right.
Mississippi when they go. Nobody thinks of Abilene, Texas, and nobody thinks of Biloxi, Mississippi. I just happened to stumble.
Like maybe you've heard of it.
Yeah. Maybe you've heard of it. So that market, I've been in there for 12 years. I was buying properties for $8,000 there. Now those properties are all worth 140, 150, 160, and this is like 12 years, and I can continue. In fact, we just found a house that I had under contract. I forgot I had it under contract, and I just told my wife, I'm like, you want this one? And like, she's got her own real estate as well, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's a good deal. I don't even remember why. I checked it out, 69 grand. It's worth 180. She's probably gonna have to put about 30 into it, but she'll be in it for 90. It's worth 180.
Yeah.
And that's free money, right?
Yeah.
Free money right away. And that's one market. Birmingham, Alabama, we just recently started going into the Midwest, where we're at right now. That's why I moved out here, believe it or not.
Yeah,
I was buying cheap houses in Vegas when the market crashed, and I just wanted to keep doing that. So wherever the houses go is probably where I'll end up moving.
Well, and let's say the market, there's a lot of doomsdayers out there that say the market's going to crash or correct. If the market does correct, it's way easier for $1 million house to become an $800,000 house than a $100,000 house to become an $80,000 house. They just don't compress the same way, which is really remarkable. In Birmingham, I've got a couple students that are they're finding great deals after great deals. Even with today's rates, inflation, all of the prices are too high. I've got a student her name's Jessica. She found a deal, duplex in Dayton, bought it for 97 because she knew it was undervalued. Immediately refied it. A month later, it appraised at 180.
Yeah, and people don't understand, like, there's deals out there every day. They're in the market. Like, when I talked about the markets that I was just mentioning to you about, I had a student the other day was talking about this place, where was it? It was like St. John or St. James, New York, right? And but I can tell you, like, North Carolina, South Carolina, it's basically the places to find inexpensive properties are red states in the Southeast and the Midwest. I bought a bunch of in Vegas when the market crashed. That not happening again. But here's the other same thing is people might say, well, you got lucky, right? Which is true. I believe I did get lucky, but I also was one of the few people that executed, because there was a lot of other people in the exact same driver's seat. But I had learned my mistakes from buying these really expensive properties that went down super, and then I was negatively cash flowing on top of all that, and I realized my mistakes, and I held on and turned it around.
Well, luck's a weird thing. It's kind of like wisdom. Wisdom is knowing the answer and what to do when you need it.
Yeah.
And for you, the benefit of luck is, you might have been presented a situation that was lucky, but you actually knew what to do with it.
Yeah.
So you were prepared, you had all the skills, and I'm more now than ever. I never grew up thinking that I'd have any idea of grandeur financially or anything like that. I just wanted to be a family, I'd work 8 to 6 or whatever. But I believe more now that anybody can be a millionaire. Anybody. It
For
is
sure.
It's a knowledge issue, a skill issue. It's not a luck issue or a you were born into it issue. In fact, if you're born into it, you're more likely to not end up being a millionaire than if you weren't born into it.
Yeah, it's so funny how many people will say, oh, you got a silver spoon in your mouth, you got this, you got that. I'm like, man, you have no idea about how I grew up. It's so true that, like, you make your own luck, you determine where you're going, and on top of all that, it's like, financial freedom, anybody can have very quickly. You had yours how fast?
I retired in 2 years from my first investment property.
Wow. So now you're helping other people. How rewarding is that for you?
It's fun. I mean, I'm not a sales guy or marketing guy. I'm a coach. I've always been that way. I was that way in college. I was leading organizations and helping people, grow. I was, in my church, I was discipling people. Even when I lived in Austin, as a single dude, I was coaching an inner city little league baseball team. Two of those boys, started coaching them at 7. 80% of those kids didn't know their dad.
Oh.
Two of those boys in that team, they were in my wedding. Shout out Jack Henry and David. Now they're both playing varsity ball. And I just love coaching. I like seeing people develop and grow.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. I think I just have always gravitated toward that. I've had a leadership capacity where I really like seeing other people succeed.
Right.
I was the funny guy in high school, so I liked seeing people laugh, and then I think that kind of transformed into seeing people do something, being a part of a team, and seeing people achieve things together.
Well, based on what you're telling me about your dad, it sounds like he might be a little bit of a teacher too.
Oh yeah. He taught me a lot. I mean, I'm super grateful to him. I owe a lot to him for sure.
What does he think about your journey?
Well, I mean, he initially when I had just married my wife, that's when I quit my W-2.
Good move.
I was making good money, and then I ended up quitting. In fact, we got married at the beginning of COVID, and so everything shut down. So we got married in our backyard, and right next to us is a church parking lot. So our aisle was the church parking lot. We walked over, got married in the backyard, and we had a honeymoon. And if there's a time to be sequestered, it's probably newlywed life a week after. So we had a honeymoon. People sent us stuff, and the week after that, we did kind of a pseudo honeymoon. We went out to a friend of a friend. Their family has a gorgeous home out on the ocean. We went and stayed at their place, and that was when I really came to and said, I'm gonna leave my W-2 and start coaching people. So I told my dad, I'm thinking he'll be thrilled, super pumped. And he was more concerned than anything. He was like, what are you doing? What you just got married. You got to provide for your wife, and everything. And I was like, Dad, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been hustling. I've been on that grind, and I don't even like the grind culture. But then after he saw how my portfolio is growing, all this stuff, he's encouraging, sending me memes like, if you never take a risk, you'll always work.
Now he's your biggest fan.
So I think he really understands it, appreciates it, and now that I'm providing for his grandkids and they get to run around and all that stuff.
Yeah. And you're a pretty big family guy, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's I as much as I love real estate, I was wired to be a dad, and so the coach piece in me, I'm. My little boy, we flew up here. It was his first time on an airplane. Mm-hmm. And so just watching him, anytime he sees a truck or a car or anything, he's, just so excited. He's super animated. And so going to the airport, there's planes everywhere. He's just losing his mind. So super fun. I posted a video of him in his seat on the plane just because it's so cute.
That's cool, man.
It's a blast.
So people who you've been helping out, have you seen some pretty big transformations for people, and how does that feed you?
It's wild. I'm pretty close to a few people creating my first few millionaires.
Nice.
Which is super. That's like a milestone for me because I want to be about creating millionaires. I was actually watching a video of Ryan Pineda recently where he was talking about there's two kinds of people, the people that talk about it and the people that do it.
Yeah.
You get the Skip Baylesses and the Stephen A. Smiths that talk about, the pundits that talk about it.
Yeah.
And then you got the athletes that do it. And the most powerful people right now are the people that do both.
Yeah.
And so if you've got somebody that's teaching you that has the actual experience, the in the trenches experience, they can really help you move faster. And so that's why, as I continue to grow, I'm motivated to grow so that I can pull other people with me.
Yeah.
And so, we had one of my students, Matt, went 0 to 12 doors in 8 months, created about $500,000 in equity, saved himself. He was paying $35,000 a year in taxes. IRS cut him a check for $24,000 this past year.
Nice.
Colette went 0 to 8 doors, 4 months from starting the program, but from buying her first door, probably she got her first door about 45 days in, and then went 0 to 8 doors in 2 months from then. Just a number of people that are just, they're just killing it. Dean went 0 to 6 doors in 4 months with less than $3,000 out of pocket.
Amazing.
So, those stores are the things that are really rewarding to me. Seeing people get their first door is super. That's the most important, because the next doors are way easier than the first one.
Oh, for sure. And having talked to so many people that have been, I didn't really understand it until I coached it, like that people are scared.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I was like, and because it's been so long, right?
Yeah.
It's not like I wasn't. I just didn't realize that other people are like frightened. They don't want to lose their money. And then when you go and you look at the surveys, like I put a bunch of surveys to people who have wanted to invest in real estate, and you look at their number one fear is losing all their money, losing their life savings. And I remember those first 2 investments I made the wrong way, and I thought I was going to lose everything. And I know that feeling, and it's not a good feeling when you have no control, you have no money, and you have no aspects of making money, and you don't know how you're going to get out of it, right?
Did you have a family when you first started investing?
No.
Okay, because I didn't either. I was a bachelor, and my thought was, worst case scenario, I sleep on a buddy's couch.
Yeah.
That's a really good worst case. It's not even under
I
a
actually
bridge.
was sleeping on my buddy's couch.
Yeah. So, I mean, the worst case scenario is not a bad worst case scenario, but now, I mean, I think of some of my students that, like, I've got one guy who, Jared invested his last dime in my program. He's got 3 kids. He works in full-time nonprofit work. He's married, and he's got 6 stores now. And, I mean, that takes some courage,
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. You got to believe in yourself.
Usually when people say...
Courage or the opposite, right? It looks like it is.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, there's a fine line between courage and folly, for sure. But I admire that. I think when people say, fear has kept me from going, they're really self-aware. Those people, they're closer to success than the ones that say, oh, I'm not scared. I just haven't done it because I'm busy, or I haven't done it because... You're scared. I mean, I run into fear all the time. In fact, that I've made that part of my mission. Is I'm a courageous person, and so when something scary comes in, I run straight to it, because that's usually the area that I need to grow the most.
What's an example of that?
I would say, growing my business, my coaching business, it was boutique for a long time. Just, working with a couple students a month here and there.
Yeah.
But what I realized was I had a couple of people come join my program that had really bad experience with other online programs.
Yeah. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. I personally don't trust online programs.
Yeah.
That's my default. And so, which is ironic because I have one.
Yeah.
But what I decided, I was talking with my wife. I said, you know what? If I don't grow this, those programs are going to find other people. And people, I had one guy invest $40,000 in a program, got 0 from it.
Ooh, I think I know which one it is.
Oh, really? Yeah. I don't.
Yeah. I had one of my students that almost invested in it. Yeah. I Googled it the other day just to see, because if you Google like top coaching programs, I just wanted to see what came up.
Yeah.
And it was one of those programs. And that's the funny thing is, like, what I teach and what you teach, people pay $40,000 for it.
Yeah.
$40,000, $50,000, and they don't get anything.
Yeah.
And, the cool thing is, like, and I can tell you this, you just mentioned, like, there are people who get ripped off. I never, just because of who I am, and I'm sure you are the same way, I never thought anybody out there was fake.
Yeah.
I didn't think it. I just thought, like, well, why would they go out there and lie?
Yeah.
Like, why would you go out there and just, like, I mean, it's easy to connect the dots and say that you're a liar.
Yeah.
So why would these people go out and lie?
Yeah. That even, with my marketing agency, we were talking through building through some of the marketing collateral, and the lead over there, Brendan, asked me, so how quickly do you think somebody could get a door with your program? I said, well, 90 days is really reasonable. He said, okay, great, 90dayrentalroadmap.com. And that's actually what we use now. And I kind of was like, well, so, it was the marketing.
Maybe I wasn't necessarily.
I was like, I don't want someone to feel like I lied to them.
Yeah.
But he said, well, how quickly have people done? Well, Michelle did it in 23 days. Douglas did it in 40. We've got people done it all the time. And I think 90 days is very reasonable. But some people will take longer because they've got, analysis paralysis, which is fear. It's a marketing job for fear,
Yeah.
I'm scared. I need more data. The hyper analytical engineering types, that's what they do. And maybe it takes a little bit longer for them. But I had experiences with organizations that were intentionally misleading so much that I almost, took the knees out of my own business because I didn't want anybody to even think that I was considering being misleading. And so yeah, really for me, my program, I decided to grow because I realized there was a real need. And there were a lot of people out there that were like, I really want to get started. I just don't know what I'm doing. And I don't want to lose a bunch of money. Like I lost $12,000 up front on my first deal.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I bought it for $18,500. I put about 24 into it.
$18,500.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that deal.
Yeah. You could see through.
Nice area, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. You could see through the foundation to the dirt.
Okay.
There's like a toilet sitting in the. I had another one that I bought around the street that we found. The pier and beam foundation was built on a stump.
Yeah.
There was no pier.
Yeah.
It was just a stump.
Oh yeah. Good house.
But I bought this house, and this contractor seemed like a good guy, and
I love that. They always seem like good guys.
Family men.
Yeah.
Really great.
Yeah.
And what turned out was he was misleading me with how much progress had happened, and I didn't have any way of third-party accountability. I was 4.5 hours away.
Yeah.
And so I told my buddy. In fact, it's the same buddy I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
My aha moments. I said, hey, swing by my property. It's like 80-90% done. It's pretty dope. And he called me when he was over there because he went to go visit one of his properties. And when he called me, when I saw his name on my phone, I thought, crap, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And he said, hey man, this is maybe 20% done. Maybe. Like demo is maybe done.
Yeah.
And I had sent $12,000 to this guy. And he was taking pictures of like the few areas that were done.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I mean, that deal even still ended up making me a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And I still hold on to it, still cash flows. But it was a gut punch because I saved up $10,000 of, stupid money to the school of hard knocks. I was willing to pay some money to figure it out. I didn't know that this existed, that you could have somebody with like actual experience walk you through, hold your hand through the whole process, carry you across the finish line. And so I just did whatever I could. And luckily, it ended up being a really good deal and still made money off of it. And I was able to get my money back through that. So,
are you interested in investing in real estate, but you don't feel like you got the time to take a coaching program? I get it, right? You're busy, you're making money, and that's okay, but you want to invest with me because you're like, Troy, I like what you do. I see what you're doing. You're a real deal. Yes, I am. I'm an average Joe. I worked at Burger King. I worked at Red Robin. I started investing in real estate, and I started from absolutely nothing, and I will take you along with my journey, and you can get all the benefits, but you got to be an accredited investor. If you want to invest with me and you want to be a part of something great and you don't have the time, guess what? We're launching a fund that you can be a part of, but you got to be an accredited investor. And if you want to find out more about what that looks like, all you got to do is click the link and we'll show you exactly what that looks like. And guess what? If you're not an accredited investor, then you may down the road be an accredited investor. So definitely learn what that's all about and enjoy the podcast, and we'll see you on the next one. That, it brings me I can't tell you the number of bad contractors that I've run up against, like the amount of thieves, the amount of people, and this is one thing that I talk to my students about all the time is don't pay any money up front. What employee do you have that you go, hey, you know what? Here's 2 weeks of pay. Do a good job.
Right. Here's your first 3 months.
Yeah, here's your first 3 months.
Yeah.
Do good.
Yeah.
But with contractors, some of these guys will say, yeah, you got to give me 50% down. Any contractor that says give me 50% down or any money down, chances are they're not for real. Yeah. Because most good contractors don't require money down.
Yeah, if they don't. In fact, I was recently moving over to a new contractor because the contractor I started with, small mom and pop, and I kind of used them a few times. Then I was telling all my friends hey, these guys are great, they're killing it. And they just grew so fast, their operations really struggled.
Yeah, that's a problem when you start telling everybody about your best guy, and then it becomes everybody else's best guy.
Well, I'm a networker. I love connecting people and whatnot, and then I realized, well, frick, I backed myself in this corner. So I was looking at a couple different options, and one of the guys said, I got an 8-plex at 265. I've got about $100,000 I need to put into it. And he said, hey, I need 50% down. I said, dude, there's no way. I'm sure you're a great guy. I'm sure you volunteer and you feed soup to the homeless, all this stuff. Great family man, but there's just no way that's happening at all.
Yeah.
So if that's a deal breaker for you, that's fine. Just let me know. No harm, no foul. I'll move on to somebody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only time I can see paying some money up front is for materials.
Yes.
But there has to be some rigid accountability. Like that, I recommended a distribution plan. So when you got your statement of work, you say, hey, this has to be done, and no less than $5,000 up front. Even no matter how big the job is, no less than that, or no more than $5,000 up front.
I would just add one thing: if you are going to pay money up front, and if there's no way around it, put it on a credit card.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If you're going to put any money up front, you put it on a credit card.
Oh yeah, because then you just say dispute,
baby.
and the bank puts the money straight back into your account, and then they go after them. So you don't have to deal with a lawyer. You don't have to go out. I mean, banks got that system down.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, and there's no reason, because most people, if it's like, hey, what's the number one thing that a contractor says when he needs money? I got to pay my guys.
Yeah.
I got to pay my guys.
Yeah. And they got to feed their family.
They got to feed their family, you big jerk, rich guy, you.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. So, what are you going to be talking about on your presentation? I'm kind of excited to hear about it.
Man, I'm excited. I think I'm giving away a lot of stuff.
Nice.
So really what my whole thing is, I want to show them how I went 0 to 40 doors in 2.5 years. All under my own name. I didn't bring on other partners or whatnot, no split equity or anything. That's all in my own name. And I don't think I did anything insane.
No.
I just followed a process. The BRRRR Method, didn't invent it. Just executed it. And so what I want to teach people, I want to give them the tools, the best practices, and the secrets that they need to be able to go out and get their first one.
Awesome.
Go out and get their first deal.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give them all of the secrets that I've developed over, I've pulled hundreds of thousands of data points to analyze markets and deal analysis and whatnot. So I'm just going to give them everything that they need to be able to go out and get their first door.
How does your back end look in terms of like the software side of things and deal analysis, being the guy? One of the guys that I know is that it's the most successful wholesaler in town. He's actually spoken at a mastermind before. You'd really enjoy him. Engineers love hanging out with each other.
Yeah.
And his name's Casey Ryan, and he's out of Vegas, where I'm from originally. And he, will just get at such a high level on like all of his systems and processes. How are you kind of using your engineer brain to systemize and process finding great deals?
Yeah. The real estate is a science. It is not an art.
Right.
It is reproducible. My goal for my students is make it simple and reproducible. Don't use big fancy words. Use words that everybody can understand, and then make it reproducible. And so on the deal analysis front, as far as tools and systems, my recommendation to my students is if they don't have any doors, they don't have any cash flow coming in, they don't need to be paying for some super secret software that's $100, $200, $500 a month just so they can get the good deals, because you can find them on Zillow. You can analyze them using public data. You don't need all that. Now, once you get to the point where you're closing lots of deals at a time, it becomes way more valuable you get some economies of scale with using tools like PropStream, or even Rentometer can be really valuable too.
Yeah.
But from a system perspective, first of all, I'm more vision oriented, and I need to focus more on shoring up my weakness of systems. So growing my business has been a lot of, all right, SOP for that, SOP for that, SOP for that, building out those systems. For the deal analysis side of things, I have the calculator that I've built that is just plug in these numbers and then out pops your cash flow and your cash on cash return. And my guidance for people is, first you got to locate the deal, then you've got to estimate, make your own estimates, because you don't want to waste your local team's time. Yeah. Unless it's something that you really know that you're interested in. Right. Then you need to validate it with an expert. Right. And when you're estimating, it's kind of you want to go through a few different iterations. Yeah. But you're trying to understand market fluency, speak the same language as the market. So if you're looking at a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, 1,400 square foot house on Clinton Street, go look at all the houses around there on Zillow. It's that easy. And go look at houses just like that, built in a similar quality, similar condition. What are they renting for? Yeah. And you might say, well, I don't know. Well, is it $15,000 a month? No. Okay, so just make a reasonable estimation. let's call it, look at these data points, let's call it 1,400. Right. Now, if that number works, go validate it with property manager. I mean, property manager's sole job is to tell people what things rent for.
Yes.
Right. Validate it with them, run your numbers again. If the numbers look good, then you're in good shape.
Now, do you self-manage or do you use property managers?
I use property managers because I want to buy my time back. I think you can definitely self-manage if you want. I want to, first of all, I invest remotely, so self-managing would be really hard.
Yeah.
But I also, there's some economies of scale in that the more doors you get, the less you pay in your property management fee. So it starts out at 10%, and then you step it down to 5 or 6%. And after you have enough doors, you can bring on somebody full-time if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. It's, property management's one of those. In Birmingham, we're having that issue right now. We don't have the best property manager, and I've known that, like, whenever I enter into a market that I'm not familiar with, I know that property management is the number one thing that I need to, because I need to know, are they protecting my money? Mm-hmm. They're protecting when I mean protecting my money, what I mean is, are they watching out for repairs? Because you got to keep in mind about who is the property manager and who are their employees. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they're tenants. Yeah. That work there.
Right. And why are they sending out a $350 an hour plumber to a toilet that just needs to be jiggled?
Right.
The handle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so are they trying to troubleshoot with the tenant? Mm-hmm. Or are they just saying, oh, your HVAC is not working? Mm-hmm. Don't bother checking the batteries. Don't bother making sure that you've changed the filter. Let's just send
the pilot light is even on. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just send an expensive HVAC tech over there to go tell us that, hey, you just need to change 2 AA batteries and you're good to go. Here's a $200 bill. Yeah. And so one of the things that we do that I would recommend anybody do who's got tenants is we charge for every repair.
Interesting. That's in your contract, in your lease.
Yeah. But you know what we charge?
What?
$25. So we charge it for every item that they request. Mm-hmm. So this is the sole purpose, to cut down on the calls because what I witnessed for years and years and years in Vegas, because we self-manage our properties, mm-hmm. is that people would come in with rent money.
Right. Yeah.
And the minute they gave the rent money, they go, hey, I need this fixed. Mm-hmm. And I realized, I actually stole the idea from someone else, like all good ideas come from someone else, but I realized that, if it's important to them, they'll pay $25. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to cover my cost, as you know. Can you get anything done for $25? Yeah, so it's not going to cover my cost, but it's at least going to get them to think before they call me. Right. And say, this is important. Mm-hmm. Then obviously we make them covered if they flushed a,
diaper down the toilet or something.
Diaper down the toilet, yeah. I'm sure you've had tenants like that before. So with interest rates going to the low 2s mm-hmm. or mid 2s mm-hmm. up to almost 8 and change percent, how have you adapted your market and what you espouse to other people? Yeah, that's going up 300% interest rates. Yeah, that's no big deal.
Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
You don't think they're trying to crash it, do they?
No, they couldn't possibly have anything but your and my best interest.
For sure, because the government always does.
Right, always.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, so, I saw recently Jerome Powell and the Fed started an Instagram account. You should go look at it because all the comments, they just posted a picture of the whole Federal Reserve Board. Man, they're getting so much hate. The comments section is hilarious.
That'd be a great
Nobody is like, way to go, Jerome, Yeah. Everybody's, it's really funny. But now, so, back in 2018, 2019, when rates were super low, money was really easy to find, really easy to come by. And really deals were, at least in my market, deals were all over the place. Yeah. Now, what's really interesting is interest rates are high, inventory's low because people don't want to move. Yes. They don't want to move out of their 2.5% house and go buy something at 7.5%. Yeah. And what they could get, you could get $1 million house for the same payment 5 years ago, as you can like a $650,000 house now because of the rates. And so all of that, putting together, there's less inventory, less people actually want to sell their house and get rid of it. So there's less deals out there. But one of the things I've noticed is there's a lot of investors or potential new investors that have said, well, I'm going to wait. And what that's meant is less competition for you and me. And so there are properties that are sitting on the market longer, the ones that we like, that we can add value to, that I can go in and offer 30% under list, and they just say, I just want to get rid of it. Especially now in November, December, January, who wants to sell a house during the holidays? Nobody.
Yeah.
So if you're selling during the holidays, you have to be selling.
Yeah. People discount the ability, which you just kind of said, 30% under. People discount the ability of a lowball offer. I love lowballing people. And
what's the worst that could happen?
They say no.
They say no.
Yeah. What's the best thing that can happen?
They say, they just accept it.
Or they meet you halfway, or they meet you down some way. And
I've had so many students just make so much money doing that, or asking for concessions in an option period. I had a student ask for $10,000 in concessions on a single family house that the purchase price was like $80,000. I said, you got to be careful not to over negotiate. You don't want them to just be like, screw you, you're trying to take advantage of me, and then cancel the contract if it's a good deal.
Can they cancel the contract during an option period?
That's a good question. In the seller, I have had sellers do it before. Then you would have to pursue them for specific performance. So if it's not if the price point of the property is low enough, usually it's not worth your time to go after them.
Mm-hmm.
So technically they cannot, but effectually they can.
They can just stop performing.
Right. They can just be like, hey, we're not going to do this.
Yeah.
And you got to decide, do I bring an attorney in and try and spend all this money, and then it's going to take months? Do I really want to deal with that headache, or do I just say, I don't like you anymore?
Yeah.
And move on to find the next one.
Yeah, it's easier to just say I don't like you anymore.
But he asked for $10,000, and they were like, yeah, sure. Took it right away.
I love it. So the option period, Texas is the only place I know that has an option period. We always call it, and then after your option period, is that where you perform all your inspections and stuff, right?
Yeah, so an option period is, you pay an option fee and earnest money. Earnest money is kind of a sign of good faith.
Yeah.
Option money is, I'm paying this amount of money for the unrestricted right to just walk away.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the amount of money that you're paying so that no one else can touch this property.
Right. Like a due diligence fee.
For you to do due diligence, you do your inspection, you get your contractor in there and stuff like that. So usually you're only getting that if you're buying something off the market or off the MLS.
Right.
In other states, it's a due diligence period, and you have to have more reason. In Texas, you can literally say, it's cold outside today, I don't want to do this contract anymore.
Yeah,
other states, you have to actually have a good reason, like, oh, we found something that we didn't know about or that wasn't disclosed previously, so we get to back out and we get our earnest money back.
Yeah, and that's so interesting because every state is different, and you got to read the contracts, because the contracts, they're really aggressive in certain states with the specific performance. Dealing with Wisconsin for the second transaction that I've been a part of, I can tell you that they like to say, we're going to sue you for specific performance, even if somebody just wants to back out and they haven't deposited earnest money. I had one of my students recently who got a little bit ahead of himself and was like, hey, I got this property. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
You're supposed to run these by me. Okay, what do you have? Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, I don't like that one. Uh-huh. And I'm like, he's like, I'm supposed to send earnest money right now. I'm like, don't send her a nickel. Yeah. And he was like, but I'm not going to get the property. I'm like, yeah, that might be a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, and so sure enough, he called her on the call that we were having, and she's like, well, you better call an attorney. And I was like, listen, this lady was trying to slam you into this deal in the first place, and now she's trying to scare you that you're going to get sued. I think you need to start talking about real estate boards, because she's not representing you, and maybe she'll get scared, right? Yeah, so it's definitely something that, what we call this on my side of things is lock it up, which is what you're talking about doing, and grind it down. Like lock and grind. Yeah. You're going to go and say, oh yeah, I knew about this, but let me ask for this, because now you're more likely to work with me. And most real estate contracts are really written that way. Hey, you're going to go buy it, you're going to do your inspections, and then we're going to renegotiate.
Yeah. And you're setting your ceiling. When you get under contract at 80 or whatever that number is, you could get some concessions. You're not going to come in and say, you know what, this is actually worth 90. I'll tell you what. We'll bump it up, right? Yeah. So I was just talking to a student the other day. She said, it's listed for 100. It's been on the market 160 days. I know that they had a contract fail at 85. I need it at 79. I said, well, you could put in an offer at 79. If they counter at 82, you've got an option period, and then you just ask for the other 3 as concessions. My rule of thumb is ask for at least $3,000 on every inspection report during an option period, because the worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
Right. And even if it's the most beautiful inspection report and it's in great shape, ask for $3,000.
That is great advice. I couldn't say it enough. I do it every time. We love grinding. And we'll grind multiple times. We'll ask for it again. If they say yes so quickly,
yeah.
We're getting to the closing table.
Actually,
you know what?
as it turns out, yeah.
Actually, as it turns out, I don't really like the way the door closes.
Right. Well, and one of the things is, one of the methods that I teach my students is called FERPA. It's what to use, what terminology to use when you're negotiating. So
Yeah.
is it more compelling if I were to come to you, you're selling to me, and if I said, hey, there's a little drip, like once every 60 seconds something drips under the kitchen sink, so will you give me $3,000 for that? Or is it to say, hey, I've got some plumbing issues I got to take care of. I need $3,000 for that. And so FERPA is foundation, electrical, roof, plumbing, AC. Right? AC is cheating, the HVAC, but
that works.
Really work,
I follow.
Right. So what I usually teach them is if there's a problem with any of those, you don't say I need to replace an outlet and I need to clean up the drip. You say I've got electrical issues that I need to take care of, and I've got plumbing I need to take care of.
Yeah.
So I need to be able to do that. I need $5,000.
Yeah.
It sounds way stronger. It gives you a way more compelling case. It's the exact same story in a better, with a better book cover.
Yeah, I like that. I would just add one thing to it that's something I've learned from. I don't know if you know, but my background was selling for the banks back during the foreclosure crisis. So I was really trained by the banks, by Fannie Mae, by Freddie Mac, by all of these banks to sell their assets. So I saw all the guys come in and negotiate. And the one word that I know that people do not like is black toxic mold. And so if we ever see something in the report that says appears to be mold,
right,
we're going to say black toxic mold, because we know that that
could
person,
be black
it appears to be. We haven't had it tested. We're not scientists, but that word seems to get people to
freaks people out. Even if it's just mold that is the color black. You know what I mean? It's black mold, but it's not that black mold.
Yeah.
It's or it might not be. It might be. I think that's the easiest money you'll ever make is just negotiating. Just ask.
Well, that's a great statement you just said. In fact, one of the guys who I've read all of his books is Roger Dawson. He wrote The Power Negotiator, and he says specifically the easiest money you'll ever make is negotiating. And it's true.
Yeah.
Because if I go on a $79,000 house and I ask you for $8,000 off and you say yes, I just knocked off a large percentage of what I was paying you, and all I had to do was ask. And if I didn't ask,
worst case scenario, they say no.
Yeah. And there's a lot of desperate sellers out there, and you're not emotionally connected to the outcome.
Yeah.
So,
well, to come back to the interest or the market specifics, right now interest rates are high, so people are complaining about interest rates being high, or at least armchair investors or pundits, whatever. They can pick between interest rates being high, or when interest rates come down, prices are going to go up later. It's a supply issue. We're 13 million homes short of what demand needs. We've
13 million?
Yeah, we've underbuilt since 2010. Every single year since then, we've underbuilt the demand that we need for the United States. And part of that is because after 08-09, restrictions became more. It became more difficult to even just pull a permit to build a single family or multifamily. And so, I understand why they're doing that, but the demand is way shorter. So
why do you think they're doing that?
I think the reason they're doing it is to try and control from some of the abuse that happened previously. So some of the manipulation and even lending requirements and stuff like that. I think 80% LTV makes a lot more sense than 120% LTV.
Yeah.
But they're trying to say they're trying to protect the consumer, but the way that the strategy that they're using isn't effective for what I think they're trying to achieve. So if once prices go down, or once rates go down, prices are going up. And what you've seen is just a supply and demand exchange. Yeah. So that we don't have enough supply. demand is still rising because people are still being born. We're still having babies.
Right.
And over time, the Fed has said, well, inflation, we printed all this money. We printed 80% of all the money out there in the last 2 years. So we really have to protect from everything really spiking and destabilizing the economy. So they pumped up the interest rates to the highest they've been in 40 years.
Yeah.
And now once they drop those rates, things are going to start ticking up. But what are you seeing? People thought when it gets to 8%, everything's going to tank. But in over 60% of markets, home prices are still going up. I was just talking to somebody the other day. Where they're investing, home prices are still homes are being bought for over market or over asking price, like that right away, because there's not enough inventory available. So once the rates start coming down, home prices go up, which is a really incredible thing for building wealth for people that own properties. So that's why I say now is the best time to invest in real estate. People are scared, they're worried, so they're saying, I'm backing out.
Yeah.
And what does Warren Buffett say? He says when people are cautious, be aggressive. When people are aggressive, be cautious.
Yeah.
And right now, everybody's super cautious, stepping back. And if you build the skills right now, you can get your first 1, 2, 5 doors before everything spikes up. That's how I became a millionaire.
Right.
Because I had properties over time. They went up in value. I was doing my portfolio review, typing away at my desk in my house, and I realized, I'm a millionaire. Isn't there supposed to be some, where's the confetti? Where is all that stuff? And so they can do it much faster than I did if they just get in at the right time.
Yeah, it just takes action. It takes execution. And it takes getting uncomfortable. And if you want to be comfortable, you can just do what you've always done. You're going to get what you've always got. Mm-hmm. But you could do exactly what you did. And what you said, it was on accident. But was there any pain, like because most people that I've noticed, like when they come into the program, they're like, recently divorced, mm-hmm. there's some sort of pain at their job, mm-hmm. or there's something that got them to say, you know what, I've been thinking about this for a long time, mm-hmm. and now this happened, and so I want to take this action. Do you see that on your end?
Yeah.
Or was that a part of your case?
Yeah, I think 90% of people run away from something, the other 10 run toward something. So like running away from pain as opposed to running toward pleasure. For me, I heard a lot of people, I was living in Austin, and it's a hip, cool area, and everybody said, God, I wish I had bought 5 years ago. Wish I had bought 5 years ago. Wish I had bought 5. And I thought, the best time to buy was, 5 years ago, but the second best time is now, so maybe now's a good time. So I started looking around, and there was one pocket of Austin that the prices hadn't exploded the way they had everywhere else. And there were some developments over there. Samsung had built a facility, Dell had built a facility, and it just seemed like, man, this is a really nice pocket. And I was living I lived at a house for like 4 months because our lease was up with some of my buddies that were moving, got married and whatnot, and I needed a holdover before I moved into this other place. And as I lived there, I had the luxury of kind of like being I was living at a buddy's place. It was month to month, like, hey, just, give me a heads up if you're moving out. Yeah. So I had the flexibility of not having to cancel a lease. And I said, man, I was tired of moving. I had just moved. And
I was tired of. I heard you moving. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, dude! Yeah. Like moving, and dudes, especially bachelors, we're not exactly great at creating a home. Like we got a folding chair and a cardboard box with a TV on it.
Futon bed might be
right.
Great.
Yeah. And for me, I'm a homebody,
and
so I like, I need my creature comforts. And so,
what are yours?
I love coffee in the morning, fancy coffee, bougie coffee.
Okay.
In fact, when I first created my first ideal day, it was I want to wake up without an alarm clock, make fancy coffee, and read until I don't want to read anymore.
Really?
Not have like a stop point where it's like, oh, I got to get going to this thing,
Is that what you do right now?
Well, it's changed since I have a kid now. So I have an alarm clock when he wakes up, but by and large, that's our daily routine.
Yeah.
Is go to sleep. I'll go wake up our little man. My wife will make some coffee. We sit in the front room. We read a little bit while he plays and eats a snack and whatnot, and then we do breakfast.
What do you like to read?
Right now, this time of year, so I read some nonfiction, and then I read fiction for just getting my brain out. And my brain is always spinning. I'm super ADD, mm-hmm. and so I need something to bring my brain somewhere else. So I'm reading Harry Potter right now.
Okay.
On the fiction side of things, I didn't read that until I don't know, 32, 33. It's fantastic.
Is it really?
Oh, it's unbelievable.
It wouldn't be a bestseller for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm reading
That's J.K. Rowling, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just starting StoryBrand, and I'm reading through. I just finished and restarted Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker.
Okay.
Where I'd pay $500 for that book, $1,000 for that book.
Really?
Really, really fantastic.
The Secrets of what?
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Yeah.
What do you like about the book so much?
It's really practical, and it says it's almost like condensing common sense that you didn't know that you knew. You know, like when he says it, it's qualities of the rich versus the poor, and he says it so plainly, where if you have a poor mindset, your initial response is defensive. You're like, oh, no, I'm not that way. You know, that's not true. But then you realize, oh, that really is true.
Now, do you read your books physically?
Yes.
You don't do Audible?
No, I don't. I mean, I'll do Audible, but usually that's not usually for something that I'm learning or something with deep character development. It's more of podcast-esque type. Like I like biographies.
Yes.
To listen to on audiobook.
Yeah, I got a great one for you.
Really?
Yes.
What is it?
It's The Gambler by Kurt Kerkorian.
Okay.
The guy who built Las Vegas that nobody knows about. Really cool story. Yeah, an amazing story.
Love biographies.
Yeah, it's so the guy grew up in Weed Patch, California, the son of Armenian immigrants, first generation, had no money, grew up poor, dirt poor, ended up becoming a pilot in World War II and ferried over the plains from Montreal to Scotland before they even knew they could reach that far. So he was a gutsy fella.
Yeah.
1 in 4 did not make it.
Sheesh.
So imagine that, like you're going out with a bunch of guys,
Yeah.
3 of you coming back, 1 of you is not, and that's happening every time. So he did that,
odds.
and then he turned that into an aviation business, and he sold that to Studebaker, and then he rolled that into into a piece of land in Las Vegas called Caesar's Palace.
Oh.
He ended up doing a master lease with Caesar's Palace, and then he rolled that into him building one of his first casinos. But he built the MGM Mirage. He bought MGM.
Dang.
He built. He was responsible for Caesar's Palace. If you've watched the Elvis movie, which is a fantastic movie, if you have not watched it, it's called the. What is that hotel called? It was called the International, but that was one of his. I mean, it's just a great story, rags to riches. He worked until he was 98 years old. The last thing he built was City Center in Las Vegas. Just a really, really, like if you want someone to look up to, you want a mentor, you want a badass dude who just took everything. I mean, at 90-something years old, he was trying to take over Chrysler.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's a great biography, and it tells his whole childhood and his story that's put together by this guy, William C. Rempel, who's a lifetime reporter for the Los Angeles Times. It was really, really a good book.
I'll have to get that on Audible. But yeah, I listen to biographies and things like that. I got to read through them. Helps me focus. I write in the margins and stuff like that. I'm actually reading less now than normal because I require myself, if it's a nonfiction book, I have to do what it's saying.
Yeah.
And so until I do it, I can't move on to the next book. And so I'm actually reading a book right now called Never Lose a Customer. Never Lose a Customer Again, or something like that. It's about the customer journey and walking through and making sure that people are taken care of in my fulfillment process and whatnot. And so as I'm reading it, I'm coming up with ideas and whatnot. And so I then take that, and that is the agenda for my meeting with my project manager, where we say, all right, these are the things we're implementing, so that it makes it easier for other people. My goal is to make it easy for people to get more doors. And so
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, that's what I'm going through right now.
Cool. So what pieces of advice, just to kind of wrap things up, would you give somebody who's thinking about investing in real estate? Maybe they're working a W-2 job. Maybe they're working in a construction site. Maybe they're 1099, and they're like, well, I can't do it. What would you tell them?
I'd say fear is the most contagious disease out there. And so if you're talking to somebody that hasn't done it, they are going to say you can't do it. Because one, they've never done it. And two, if they could do it and they haven't done it, then they would be embarrassed.
Yeah.
Right? So they're not going to incriminate themselves. So if you want to see if it's possibly done, just go see if someone's doing it. And if someone is doing it, go try and learn from them. It doesn't have to be a coach. It could be somebody. If you know somebody that will teach you, they'll give you the time. They know what you need to know, and they can communicate it. Great. Or hitch your wagon up to their truck and let them just ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
But you need to talk to somebody that's actually doing it.
Yeah.
Because you will get the actual answer as to how complex it is, how hard is it, how much effort does it take.
Right.
Instead of just the fear of, well, no, that's definitely not possible.
Yeah. And there's so many people who just want to bring you down and they don't want to help you. So if you're listening right now and you're thinking about investing in real estate, you're talking to two normal dudes that changed their life by investing in real estate. And it's substantial. I mean, could you imagine your life working that W-2 job right now?
It's crazy. It's crazy. Every now and again, I'll have actually a dream that I'm back in my W-2.
Do you wake up with cold sweats?
I wake up and I'm like, babe, oh my gosh, oh frick,
Yeah, I always say you should work a job for knowledge.
Yeah.
Like if you're learning and you like it and it's benefiting you, work that job and start investing in real estate.
Yeah.
But if you're not learning anything from that job, if it's not making you better, a more marketable, skilled person, then you should probably get another job.
Right. You live in America, though. I mean, it's the wealthiest generation in the history of the world. Like, you're in a really pretty good spot. Even at risk of being tactless, like even being homeless in America is a much better situation. Like, you're much more likely to survive than many other places in the world. And so you're in a really good position from a financial perspective, just in your ecosystem. It just doesn't feel that way because fear is such a weird, like, compelling thing that can really blind you.
Fear is the ultimate motivator. If you look at what just happened and how afraid everybody was, and the whole, like, the whole sheep situation, people falling. I remember going through COVID. Okay, this was what brought me to Kansas City, and I was flying back and forth here, and I remember when everything was shutting down in March, and I'm like, there's nobody on the planes, and then I would fly back, and you didn't have to wear a mask back then, and you're from Texas, so you didn't have to wear one ever. So I'm flying back and forth, and there's nobody, and then eventually things started to pick up like a year later. And now everybody's got their masks on and we're all on this plane. I was like, I liked it so much better when everybody was scared. When everybody was staying home and they were scared and I had the whole plane to myself. I remember it'd be like me, maybe one other passenger, and we got the whole damn plane to ourselves. But fear's a big motivator, but I'll tell you what, if a guy like Blake can do it and a guy like Troy can do it, then I always say anybody can do it. If you can do it or if I can do it. Yeah. We're no different than anybody else. I really appreciate you coming on.
Of course.
I appreciate you coming to our event, speaking, donating your time. I appreciate you, being so transparent with. We share one of our same marketing people. Appreciate being transparent about that. I appreciate you coming out and spending your time with us, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. All right, guys. Peace. Have you ever wanted to start investing in real estate, but you just don't have the time? You don't have the ability to get started, but you got the capital, right? And you want all of the advantages that the capital offers you. Well, I started a fund, and you can invest with me and my team. In fact, I'm in one of the buildings that I bought using my own money, but you could invest and actually get the benefits of investing with me and my team. Well, you got to be an accredited investor. And you've got to go to our website. I'll include the link in our bio. And you could start investing with us. It's super cool. We're going to do a lot of cool projects in Kansas City and around the country. And you'll be able to be a part of it. Make sure you give this podcast a 5-star review. Share it with a friend and take action.